Welcome to the 700 Club. The Genocide Games. That's what some human rights groups are calling the Beijing Olympics. They're protesting China's brutal treatment of the Uyghur Muslims and other minorities.
Some activists are calling for people to boycott watching the Olympics, while one organization is encouraging viewers to pray for China during the Games. George Thomas has the details.
They have oppressed basically every dissent in China.
Wu Kai-shi should know. At age 21, he fled China for his leading role in the Tiananmen Square protests of 1989. Wu Kai-shi is also Uyghur, and more than 1 million, maybe more, of his Muslim ethnic group are being held in concentration camps in China's Xinjiang province, prompting some human rights activists to call this week's Olympics the Genocide Games.
It's a country that use Olympic as a platform to show muscle to the world, while they're at the same time oppressing dissents or violating human rights within their own country.
The Chinese government has denied all accusations of any human rights abuse.
It creates a situation of plausible denial. It calls these concentration camps vocational training centers to eliminate poverty in the region, eliminate terror among Muslims, which is absolutely laughable. Our military has estimated 1 to 3 million of these Muslims have been incarcerated for indoctrination in these camps.
The United States, along with the UK, Australia and Canada, are staging diplomatic boycotts of the Games by not sending government officials in protest of Beijing's human rights abuses.
We must show that the United States is an unyielding and unapologetic advocate for human rights and unafraid of speaking the truth and upsetting General Secretary Xi and his Communist Party thugs.
Activists are urging athletes and sponsors to speak out during the Games.
Your silence is their strength. This is what they want more than anything. That the world will play by China's rules, that we will follow China's lead, that we will look away from these atrocity crimes for the sake of business as usual.
Meanwhile, it's business as usual as Beijing continues its typical crackdown on political and religious activists ahead of sensitive dates like Friday's opening ceremonies.
They round up the dissidents and known critics of the regime or people that they think will speak out. They put them in detention. They're called black jails. They're hidden detention. It's unofficial. It's extrajudicial. And they do that as a preemptive strike so that there is no opportunity to protest.
With the eyes of the world turning toward Beijing, Voice of the Martyrs is launching PrayForChina2022.com to remind people to pray for China's Christians.
Christians are seen as a threat, their message is seen as a threat, and the government is doing everything in their power to keep that message from spreading.
China's President Xi Jinping has severely suppressed religious freedom in recent years, especially going after Christians. China sits at number 17 on Open Doors' World Watch list of the 50 most dangerous countries for Christians.
China is using a blanket of surveillance monitored by artificial intelligence to watch the movements of people of faith. It's even using facial recognition to monitor those who enter places of worship.
Thus far, thousands from more than 100 countries have pledged to pray during the Olympic Games.
We're going to see figure skating, we're going to see ski jumping, we'll probably see a lot of great shots of the Great Wall of China. We want every one of those things to be a reminder, hey, I have Christian brothers and sisters in China who are suffering because of the name of Jesus Christ. This is a great time to pray for them.
George Thomas, CBN News.
Well, this is absolutely a great time to pray for China, to pray for the gospel to be strong and go forward in that nation. It's also a time to pray for America. If China gets belligerent, and there's every indication they're going to make a move on Taiwan, if they get belligerent, our hands are literally going to be tied by all the international companies that do business in China. And we've already seen how they refuse to criticize, they refuse to call to attention, the world's attention, what's happening. And I'm talking companies like Disney, like Apple, like Cisco, They're so dependent on the Chinese market for their growth that they don't want to offend the government in anything. Therefore, they're willing to put up with the censorship, with the lack of freedoms, and President Xi is going to continue to do that. The China First policy of their government and the adherence on ideological grounds in trying to stop out any dissent and any other different view of the world is absolutely astounding. They are the example of what can come in a world government, and it's something that all Christians around the world, all people, all freedom-loving people around the world should wake up and pay attention to. In other news, ABC News is now suspending The View's co-host Whoopi Goldberg after her comments claiming, and I still can't believe it, that the Holocaust was, quote, not about race, close quote. John Jessup has more on that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
Goldberg, the actress and TV host, made the remarks Monday while discussing a Tennessee school board's decision to ban a popular graphic novel about the Holocaust.
If you're going to do this, then let's be truthful about it, because the Holocaust isn't about race. No, it's not about race.
No, it's about a different race.
But it's not about race. It's not about race.
What is it about?
Because it's about man's inhumanity to man. These are two white.
Those comments sparking widespread backlash. Goldberg later apologized the next day, acknowledging that the Nazis considered the Jewish people an inferior race.
I regret my comments, as I said, and I stand corrected. I also stand with the Jewish people, as they know and y'all know, because I've always done that.
Despite the apology, ABC News announced Goldberg's 2-week suspension Tuesday night, the network saying it stands in solidarity with its Jewish colleagues, friends, family, and communities. Well, students and officials at historically black colleges and universities are on edge after a series of bomb threats. On Tuesday, the first day of Black History Month, at least 16 schools were forced to shut down or enact emergency procedures. All of this after more than half a dozen schools were threatened on Monday. Howard University in Washington, D.C. has been targeted 3 times in the past month. While no bombs have been found at any of the schools, the FBI and ATF are investigating the incidents. The committee investigating the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol is looking into the Trump administration's alleged proposals to seize voting machines after the 2020 election. According to Politico, investigators reportedly have a draft of an unissued executive order that would have called on the defense secretary to seize control of those machines owned by the states. The committee is also looking into what involvement President Trump may have had in efforts to involve the Justice Department and Homeland Security to help in those plans. Well, with the Capitol deeply divided over partisan politics, lawmakers are coming together this week for a time of prayer at the 70th Annual National Prayer Breakfast on Thursday. CBN's Caitlin Burke spoke with one senator who says there's no more important time for lawmakers on both sides to grab hands and seek God's will.
Shared faith can build powerful relationships. Senator Chris Coons tells me he's seen it firsthand during a weekly Bible study with a bipartisan group of colleagues.
I've had a chance to hear really powerful, moving stories from some of the most conservative Republican members of the Senate, and it's built real bridges of friendship for us. And I hope the weeks that I've spoken, they've seen the same, that even though they think I'm terribly misguided and have awful policy ideas, that I'm actually not that bad a person and a decent Christian and someone who is caring and a good friend.
While a similar study group meets in the House, the prayer breakfast is a chance to bring in the rest of the country.
My prayer is that we would still the noise, the anger, that we would make quiet our hearts and make space in our lives for that which moves us, grounds us, inspires us, and allows us to see the divine in each other.
President Biden will speak in person at this year's event after having to appear virtually last year. As the pandemic continues and many Americans struggle with grief, Coons says he believes the president's most powerful testimony is that of staying faithful through great personal tragedy.
When he was a brand new, young, promising, newly elected senator, to lose his wife and daughter just before Christmas, in a terrible car accident. And just a few years ago now, when he was vice president, he lost his beloved son, Bo, whose birthday will be this Thursday, the day of the prayer breakfast. He connects with people who are living through grief. He found a way to turn towards God, not away from God, even in one of those moments of loss that just makes millions of people question, why go on? Why should we endure this suffering?
Meanwhile, some critics on the left are calling for members of Congress to stop participating in the National Prayer Breakfast. The Freedom from Religion Foundation is sending letters to lawmakers, connecting the breakfast to the January 6th Capitol attack and raising concerns about the dangers of Christian nationalism.
Frankly, at the end of the day, if we're going to have a robust, wide open global prayer breakfast, there will be people with whom we disagree. That's part of being human. I'd rather have a genuine celebratory annual prayer breakfast than say, I'm going to refuse to go if there's a handful of people with whom I deeply disagree.
Brian Stevenson, author of the best-selling book Just Mercy, an inspiration for the film, will be this year's keynote speaker. Stevenson is also the founder and executive director of the Equal Justice Initiative, a human rights organization committed to ending mass incarceration and challenging injustice. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Gordon, certainly in polarizing times like these, it's so encouraging to see lawmakers come together.
It's so encouraging to see Christians come together. Oh, how good and pleasant it is when brothers can dwell together in unity. And even if we can't agree over policy, over particular bills, we can't seem to ever stop campaigning, can we at least stop to pray and ask God to heal our nation, to bring us together? We need to keep in mind the words of Jesus. A house divided cannot stand. When the campaigns are over, the elections are all said and done, and whoever's new and whoever continues in office has taken their oath, well, let's come together and say, God bless America.